Hello, you join me today with a 2016 BMW S1000 XR. This was a new model for BMW, came out in 2015, the year before this, although this particular model ran from 2015 to 2019, at which point it received some upgrades. However, this particular model, it's got a 999cc inline 4 engine, puts out 160 brake horsepower and 114 newton meters of torque. Okay, so it's pretty punchy, and it fits into what BMW call the sports adventure category. Okay, now BMW are famous for their sports tours, things like the GS and so on, but this is a little different. Now, I'll be the first person to admit that I haven't really been a fan of BMW motorcycles in the past. I've had cars, and I'm not against the brand per se. My last car was a BMW M4, which I loved very much, but their motorcycles always seemed a little bit too try hard. You know, let's give it some really funky styling. Let's give it asymmetric lights at the front. You know, let's look a bit wacky and crazy, which always put me off a little bit. But great reviews, and the number of these bikes that you see on the roads can't be wrong. So it's time for me to get on one and see what it's like. In terms of specification, it's certainly impressive. As I mentioned before, it's got that 999cc inline 4 engine with plenty of power and torque. At the front here, we've got some Brembo brakes leading up into, if you look under the beak here, for want of a better phrase, you'll see the steering damper underneath. Okay, something to help you the front end with all that power. Back on the bike itself, you've got the usual sort of affair, so you've got heated grips, you've got various riding modes. There are 4 riding modes on here. You've got rain, road, dynamic and dynamic plus. You've got adjustable suspension. All right, so these are adjustable sax suspension on here, and ABS, got cruise control, and it's got quick shifter as well. So it's pretty well spec'd up. Weight-wise, you're looking at 228 kilos, which is fairly typical for a bike of this type. It's quite physically big at the front of the bike, although it's got an 840mm seat height, so that's not particularly high. It's fairly standard. But once you get on the bike, it's easy to move. Once you're out and about, you don't find it cumbersome or heavy at all. All right, so it's got quite wide bars. It's easy to manoeuvre. Not a problem there at all. Now, my own bike is a Ducati Multistrada 1200, which I reviewed a little while ago on the channel, and this really is kind of a direct competitor. So I was really interested to see what it's like once you get it out on the road and how the two compare. Obvious thing out of the way first, the Ducati's got that big thumpy V-twin, which is great from a characteristics point of view, okay? It's got loads of character in that engine. However, the drawback of that is it's a bit of a pain around town. It's really lumpy, it's really juddery at low revs. It's not a great experience riding it around town. However, as soon as you jump to an inline 4 like this has got, silky smooth, it's a much easier, nicer proposition when you're in those kind of low gears around town. Okay, so that's kind of a win for this bike. Both bikes putting out about the same amount of power. The Ducati's 150 brake horsepower, this is 160, broadly the same amount of torque, and they both go extremely well. I mean, if you wrap the throttle open on this, it will go, you know, you look at any of the reviews, they all say superbike performance in a much more comfortable package, and I can't say anything that will argue with that. This, like the Ducati, is supremely comfortable. I haven't used it as much, clearly. I mean, I'd ridden to Norway and back on my Ducati over the course of a week, so I really got to test out its comfort there. I haven't done that here, but I've got, this seat's comfortable, the rider position's comfortable. I've got no reason to doubt that you could crush big miles on this bike and without getting uncomfortable at all. The front screen up here is adjustable, so it's in its lowest setting now. It's just on some levers, and you'll find if you give it a pull, there you go. How easy is that? Just pops it into its highest setting. On the dash, it's maybe not as fancy as some of its slightly more modern counterparts. It's not in colour, for example, but you've got everything that you need on here, and it's well displayed. It's nice and clear. So you've got your speed, the riding mode that you're in, your fuel gauge, gear indicator, engine temperature, range on the fuel tank here, and clock. And if I hit the trip button, you'll see that range changes to trip computers, or trip counters rather, fuel economy, average speed, and so on. You've also got over here, you've got your engine warning light and your ABS. You can turn the ABS off if you like. And then down at the bottom, you've got indicators and lights and so on. Handling's very good on this bike. You've got a fair amount of power going through that rear wheel. It's coped with really well by that. You've got a big 190 section rear tyre on there. It's not intimidating at all. I found it very confidence inspiring. Up front, you've got those Brembo brakes, and they're superb as always. They're always brilliant, and there's no deviation from the rule here. Loads of power in those brakes. Back brakes, much of a muchness as they normally are. Now, the one area where I would say where I think this loses out to my Ducati is the suspension. It's not bad on here at all. It's adjustable, but there's only 2 modes to it. You've only got, I think it's dynamic and road. Those are the only 2 settings. Whereas the Olin suspension on my Ducati is absolutely superb. I found this a little bit squishy for my liking. If I'm being picky, I prefer an even harder setting than you've got available here. And so there you have it. There's my brief review of the 2016 BMW S1000 XR. It's been interesting for me. I said at the beginning that I kind of avoided BMW motorcycles, but I've really got on well with this. I really enjoyed it. It's a fantastic motorcycle. And I've got to say actually, whereas if I was looking for another sports tour adventure bike, I would have leaned towards what I know and maybe looked at another Ducati Multistrada. Having spent some time with this, I think I'd definitely have to throw one of these into the mix. Brilliantly comfortable. It's got all the power and speed that you'd ever need. I mean, you just don't need a super bike on our roads. You really, really don't. Not only does this have enough power and enough speed, and plenty of speed to get you into trouble, it will do motorway speeds in 2nd gear, for example, and it will get there very quickly too. You're not compromised like you are on a sports bike, that kind of really uncomfortable riding position which gives you a bad back, hurts your shoulders, hurts your wrists, hurts your knees. You can arrive there perfectly comfortable, having carried all your luggage. Okay, it doesn't look as good as a sports bike, clearly, and it's certainly not going to be as good around a track, but who rides around a track all the time? Anyway, if you want to pick one of these up, they're about 14 grand new. Not particularly cheap, but you know, broadly speaking, it's about right. You find the Ducatis in the same kind of ballpark price-wise, and you get a lot of bike for your money. You really do, and certainly in this case, it's very, very well specced up. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you found it informative. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.